Detective Sarah Collins first heard about the case on October 24th, when 4 young women came to the Philadelphia police station bringing shocking testimonies about a strange party in an abandoned house. One of them, Kate Morrison, claimed she had been possibly poisoned by unknown substances. The others confirmed her story. All 4 were visibly shaken. Collins reviewed surveillance footage from nearby intersections. On the video, around 11 p.m. on October 22nd, a group of young people was seen leaving Maple Street in a Philadelphia suburb. Among them were the women who had come forward. They looked disoriented. One of the guys was supporting Kate by the arm. 10 minutes after they left, 2 police cars arrived at the house. The call had been made by neighbors complaining about loud music. When officers reached the scene, the house was empty. The music was still playing, coming from speakers connected to an iPhone left on the windowsill. The house was completely deserted. No furniture, no personal belongings, no signs of recent habitation. Only beer pong tables, red plastic cups, empty bottles, and 3 large ice-filled refrigerators stocked with alcohol. Neighbors confirmed the house had been vacant for 8 months. The previous owners, the Harrison family, had moved away after the death of the family matriarch. The house was put up for sale, but no buyers had come forward. The real estate agency claimed the door had always been locked and the keys stored in the office safe. No one had taken the keys that day. No one had given permission for a party. How the people got inside was a mystery. Collins returned to the women's statements. Kate said she had received an invitation from a guy she knew at Temple University. The detective requested screenshots of Instagram messages. The invitation included the exact time, address, and house rules. Enter only through the front door. Do not go out to the backyard. Bring your own alcohol. The ratio of guys to girls was 1-to-1. Detective Collins reached out to the young man who supposedly sent the invitation, Jason Turner, a third-year student at Temple University. He swore he'd never heard of the party. More than that, his phone had been switched off all evening on October 22nd. Because he was at a concert in New York City, his alibi was solid. Tickets in hand, footage from cameras at the entrance to Madison Square Garden. Someone had used his name. Collins ordered a technical analysis of the messages Kate had received. The results were shocking. The texts had been sent using an anonymous messaging app, masquerading as Jason Turner's Instagram profile. The IP address was fake, passing through multiple VPN servers across different countries. The trail led nowhere. Somewhere in Eastern Europe, it vanished. But the strangest revelation was yet to come. Among the items left behind in the house, police found an iPhone connected to the Bluetooth speakers. It had been purchased in cash at Bestie just 2 days before the party. A new Spotify account had been created on the phone, detached from any personal information. The playlist contained 40 songs, carefully timed to play throughout the night. The last song ended exactly at 11:40 p.m., the moment the police entered the house. Someone had planned this meticulously. Collins returned to questioning the women. Shauna Park, one of Kate's friends, gave more details. When they entered the house, they were greeted by a man in his mid-50s who claimed to be the father of the party's organizer. He introduced himself as John. John said his son Luke was somewhere inside, among the guests. He was friendly and outgoing, offering drinks, mixing cocktails for the girls, pouring shots, tequila, and whiskey. He kept coming over to chat, but no one ever saw Luke. The detective asked all 4 women to describe John. All gave similar but vague accounts. A man about 50, graying hair, average height, jeans, and a checkered shirt. Nothing remarkable. A face you'd forget in a crowd. Collins had a composite sketch drawn. When it was shown to other party guests, most confirmed, yes, they'd seen this man, but others disagreed. Some said he looked younger, some remembered dark hair, not gray. Still others couldn't recall him at all. Descriptions didn't match. A technical team examined all the guests' phones. On several iPhones and Androids, traces of Wi-Fi hacking were found. Someone had set up a temporary router in the house, and many guests had unknowingly connected to it. Through the network, someone gained access to contacts, group chats, Instagram accounts, and the guests' real-time locations. During the party, Kate received a message from an unknown number. She didn't remember writing first. Yet, on her iPhone was a chat. JM apparently started when she was already intoxicated. She had given him her phone number. He called himself John, wrote that he liked her, and even asked for her dorm's address. After the girls left in an Uber, he kept sending messages. "Where are you? I'm on my way. I'm at your Temple University dorm." The phone number turned out to be virtual, created through Google Voice, untraceable. At that moment, Collins realized she was dealing with someone skilled in technology, someone who meticulously planned every move. But the question remained, why? Why go to such lengths? She returned to the empty house on Maple Street. The sun was setting, casting orange light through the lifeless windows. The house looked more deserted than ever. She entered inside. The smell of mold and dampness hit her first. The walls were covered with old wallpaper, and the floor squeaked under her feet. In the corner of the living room, there were still refrigerators, left behind by the police. She opened one. The ice had melted. Inside, there were cans of Budweiser and bottles of cheap wine. Collins moved into the kitchen. Here, John was making cocktails. On the countertop, there were traces of red Solo cups. She opened the cabinets. They were empty, no traces of chemicals, no evidence. She went upstairs. 3 bedrooms, all empty. A bathroom with a broken mirror. In one of the bedrooms, a window was slightly open. Collins stepped closer. On the windowsill, there was someone's earring. She took a photo of it as evidence. Going back downstairs, the detective noticed a door to the basement. It was locked. She called the technicians to open the lock. 20 minutes later, the door was opened. The staircase led down into darkness. Collins turned on her flashlight and began descending. The steps were wooden, old, covered with dust. The basement smelled of earth and something else she couldn't identify. It was empty below. Concrete floor, stone walls. In one corner stood an old stove, long out of use. Collins carefully examined every corner. Nothing. She was about to leave when she noticed scratches on the floor. Someone had recently moved something heavy. The trail led toward the far wall. She stepped closer. The wall looked uneven, as if part of it had been recently plastered over. Collins called in another forensic team. A few hours later, they broke through the wall. Behind it, a small niche. Inside were personal belongings. A Michael Kors handbag, an iPhone, keys to a Honda Accord, and a wallet containing a Pennsylvania driver's license. Collins checked the name on the license. Emily Grayson, 23 years old, reported missing on October 16, 2015, exactly 1 year ago. Emily Grayson's case had been closed due to lack of evidence. Her Honda Accord was found abandoned in the parking lot of King of Prussia Mall. No signs of violence. No witnesses. Her family believed she had run away, started a new life somewhere. But here were her belongings, hidden inside the wall of an empty house. Collins requested files on other missing persons cases in Montgomery County over the past 10 years. The results came back the next day. 8 people had disappeared under strange circumstances, 6 women and 2 men. Ages ranged from 19 to 30. All vanished between October and November. All were last seen on a Friday or Saturday night. Not one case had been solved. The detective began reviewing each case individually. The first victim, Lisa Connor, 21, disappeared in October 2007. She was supposed to go to a party with friends from Villanova University. Her friends said Lisa told them she would drive separately because she was meeting someone on the way. She never arrived. Her phone went dark around 10 p.m. Her Ford Focus was found on the shoulder of Route 76, 3 miles from her home. Keys in the ignition, gas in the tank. No signs of struggle. The second case, David Horton, 25, vanished in November 2009. He was walking home from a bar on Main Street. Surveillance cameras caught him at the corner of Park Avenue at 11:30 p.m. After that, he disappeared. No one ever saw him again. The third victim, Nicole West, 22, went missing in October 2011. She was on a date with a guy she'd met on Tinder. They agreed to meet at Starbucks. He never showed up. Nicole waited for an hour, then messaged a friend on Snapchat, saying she was heading home. Her Toyota Camry was found in the parking lot of the same Starbucks the next day. The door was open, the alarm hadn't been triggered, and her iPhone was found inside the car. The last message in iMessage read, "Heading home, everything's fine." Collins noticed a pattern. All the victims disappeared in the evening hours. All were alone or had separated from their group. All made their final contact at roughly the same time of night. But the strangest detail was consistent across cases, mentions of parties, meetups, or plans that never actually happened. The detective decided to dig deeper into the Maple Street house. She requested the property's ownership history in Montgomery County. The house was built in 1972. The first owners, the Miller family, lived there until 1995, then sold it to the Wilsons. The Wilsons stayed until 2003. After them, the Harrison family purchased the property and owned it until February 2016. Collins reached out to the former owners. The Millers had moved to Florida and struggled to remember much about the house. The Wilsons were more forthcoming. Mrs. Wilson said they sold the house because they felt uncomfortable living there. She described strange noises at night, the sensation of being watched through the windows. Her husband chalked it up to old wiring and creaky floors, but Mrs. Wilson was certain something was wrong with the place. The Harrisons were more complicated. The mother, Jennifer Harrison, died under mysterious circumstances in January 2016. Official cause of death, heart attack. But her daughter, Carol, insisted her mother had been perfectly healthy. A week before her death, Jennifer told her daughter someone was watching her. She found strange footprints in the backyard, heard footsteps in the basement, and noticed things in the house being moved. Carol told the detective that after her mother's death, she and her father couldn't stay in the house anymore. Too many memories, too many strange things. They put the house up for sale and left for California. Collins realized the house was connected to something bigger. She returned to analyzing the events of the party on October 22nd. After interviewing all the guests, the detective pieced together a fuller picture. About 70 people attended the party. Most didn't know each other. Everyone received invitations through acquaintances or via social media, Instagram and Snapchat. Nobody knew for sure who organized the event. One guest, Brad Simons, a Drexel University student, told the detective that at some point during the party, he noticed John leading one of the girls upstairs. She looked very drunk, barely able to stand. Brad thought John was taking her to the bathroom, but when he went upstairs a few minutes later, nobody was there. He asked John where the girl was. John replied she'd already left with her friends by Uber. Collins asked Brad to describe the girl. Dark hair, medium height, wearing a cat costume with ears and a tail, clearly bought at Party City. The detective showed Brad photos of all the girls known to have attended the party, but he didn't recognize any of them. Collins felt a chill run down her spine. What if there were people at the party whom no one remembers? She returned to the technical analysis. The Wi-Fi router installed in the house had been sending data to an external server. The expert was able to partially recover the connection log. 73 devices had connected to the network, but when Collins compared the list with guests' phones, a discrepancy appeared. Only 68 people admitted they had been at the party. 5 devices were not identified. Who else was in that house? Collins decided to review surveillance cameras on neighboring streets more carefully. She requested all recordings for the entire evening and night of October 22nd. A technical specialist helped process the footage. The video showed cars pulling up to the house, people getting out, walking inside. At 9:30 p.m., a black Ford Transit van arrived. A middle-aged man got out, pulled 3 large rolling coolers from the trunk, and wheeled them into the house. His face wasn't visible. The hood covered it. The van left at 10 p.m. Collins tried to read the Pennsylvania plates, but they were covered in dirt. Enhancement attempts brought poor results. A few days later, Collins got a call from the lab. Analysis of the cooler's contents showed traces of Rohypnol in several Budweiser cans and bottles of cheap wine. It's a powerful sedative that, when mixed with alcohol, causes rapid intoxication, memory loss, and disorientation. That explained why Kate and the other women blacked out so quickly, but the worst came later. In the basement, in the same hidden niche where Emily Grayson's belongings were found, experts discovered traces of blood. DNA analysis showed the blood belonged to 3 different people. Collins compared the results with the missing persons database. 2 samples matched Emily Grayson and Nicole West. The 3rd sample was not identified. The detective realized she was dealing with a serial offender. Someone had used this house for many years to lure victims. The party on October 22nd was only the latest in a series of similar events. Collins returned to questioning Kate. She asked the girl to recall every detail of that night. Kate struggled to piece events together. She remembered John handing her a cocktail, Smirnoff vodka with Red Bull. She remembered playing beer pong. She remembered her head starting to spin. Then, blackout. The next memory, she was in an Uber. Friends were taking her back to her dorm at Temple University. The detective asked if Kate had noticed anything unusual in the house. Kate thought for a moment, then said that when she went to the bathroom on the 2nd floor, she noticed a door to one of the bedrooms slightly open. The light inside was on. She peeked in. The room was empty, but clothes lay on the floor. Women's clothes, Levi's jeans, a t-shirt from Forever 21, Nike sneakers, everything folded neatly, as if someone had placed it there on purpose. Collins went back to the house immediately. She went upstairs and entered that bedroom. The clothes were gone, but marks on the floor remained, as if something had been lying there for a long time. Collins called in the forensics team. They found fabric fibers caught in the gaps between the floorboards. Analysis showed they were fibers from women's Levi's jeans and a cotton t-shirt. The examination also found DNA traces on the fibers. Collins sent the samples to the lab. A week later, the result came back. The DNA belonged to Nicole West, the young woman who disappeared in October 2011. Nicole had been here in this house 5 years ago. Collins began to reconstruct the events. Someone had been luring people to this house for many years using different methods. Fake Instagram invitations, false Tinder profiles, promises of parties. The victims came willingly, suspecting nothing. Inside, they were met by a person who introduced himself as the organizer, the host, a friend. He offered drinks, spiked with Rohypnol. The victims blacked out. And after that? That remained a mystery. No bodies were found in the house or anywhere on the surrounding property. Collins organized a massive search. A K-9 team swept the entire area. They combed the Wissahickon woods behind the house, checked nearby ponds, inspected abandoned buildings across Montgomery County. Nothing. The detective returned to the technical analysis. The iPhone left in the house contained a Spotify playlist that played through the night. An expert discovered that before the playlist was created, the Tor browser had been installed on the phone to access hidden parts of the internet. The browsing history had been deleted, but specialists managed to recover fragments. The phone had been used to access closed forums on the dark web, where topics such as kidnappings, human trafficking, and other serious crimes were discussed. Collins realized she was dealing not with a lone offender, but possibly with an organized group. The party in the vacant house was only part of a larger operation. She went back to the witnesses and interviewed the neighbors in more detail. One neighbor, an elderly Mrs. Jenkins, said she had seen a black Ford van near the house several times over the past few months. Always late at night, always parked some distance away from the property. She assumed they were workers doing repairs, but never saw anyone there during the day. Collins requested camera footage for the past 6 months. A technical specialist processed the materials and built a timeline of the van's appearances. There were 8 visits recorded in total, all on Friday or Saturday nights, all around the same time, between 8 and 10 p.m. The van arrived, someone got out, entered the house, stayed for 30 minutes to an hour, then drove away. Collins realized someone had been preparing the house for events, bringing equipment, alcohol, possibly installing hidden cameras. The detective decided to sweep the house again for concealed devices. Technical surveillance specialists examined every inch. In the living room, they found a miniature camera hidden inside a vent grill. The camera was active and transmitting to an external device. Experts tried to trace the signal, but it ran through encrypted connections that couldn't be cracked without specialized equipment. Another camera was found upstairs, in the bedroom where Kate had seen the clothing. The camera faced the center of the room. Collins felt a wave of horror engulf her. Someone wasn't just abducting people, someone was recording it. Experts seized the cameras and tried to recover the footage. The memory cards were wiped, the data professionally removed, but specialists managed to partially restore fragments of one video file. It showed a room on the second floor. In the center stood a young woman. She swayed slightly, clearly under the influence of substances. Then a man entered the frame. His face wasn't visible, the camera captured only from the neck down. He approached the girl, took her by the hand, and led her out of frame. The video cut off. Collins couldn't determine who the girl was. The quality was too low. But a clothing expert identified the Forever 21 t-shirt on the girl as matching the one Nicole West wore on the day she disappeared. The detective realized time was running out. If the perpetrator learned the police were onto him, he could flee or destroy the evidence. Collins set up round-the-clock surveillance on the house, but weeks passed and nothing happened. The property stayed empty. No one came. She began examining other vacant homes in the area. There were more than a dozen. She checked each property's history. 3 houses showed the same pattern: long-term vacancy, multiple ownership changes, neighbors' complaints about strange noises, and suspicious activity. The detective organized inspections of all 3. In the first, nothing. In the second, signs of recent occupancy: Marlboro cigarette butts, empty Budweiser bottles, shoe prints, but nothing directly pointing to a crime. The third house was the most interesting, an old mansion on the outskirts of Montgomery County, vacant for 2 years, no neighbors nearby. When Collins stepped inside, the smell hit her, the same one she sensed in the Maple Street basement: earth, and something else, something unsettling. She went down to the basement. It was dark and cold. The flashlight cut through the darkness, picking out fragments: old pipes crusted with rust, brick walls mottled with mold. In the corner stood a metal door. Collins moved closer. The door was secured with a heavy padlock. She called in the technicians. An hour later, the lock was opened. Behind it was a small room, about 10 by 13 feet. Concrete walls, floor, and ceiling. In the corner, an old mattress. On the wall, a chain with handcuffs. On the floor, empty water bottles, wrappers from Snickers bars. Someone had kept people here. Forensics collected samples. Analysis showed DNA from 4 different individuals. 2 samples matched missing persons Emily Grayson and David Horton. The other 2 were not identified. Collins understood she had found the holding site, but where were they now? She went back to the Ford Transit analysis. A technical specialist managed to recover several frames where the Pennsylvania license plate was partially visible. The examination identified the first 3 characters. Collins requested a list of all black Ford Transit vans in Pennsylvania with plates starting with those characters. The list was long, 127 vehicles. The detective began checking each owner. Most had alibis or didn't match in age and appearance. But one name stood out: Martin Holmes, 53. Lives alone in a country house in Chester County, 30 miles from Philadelphia. Works freelance in IT, unmarried. No children. Neighbors described him as quiet and reserved, rarely seen outside. Collins decided to check him. She requested a search warrant. A judge issued it the next day. A team of detectives and officers headed to Holmes's house early in the morning. The house stood in the woods, far from other buildings. When they arrived, everything looked quiet and still. The windows were shut with curtains. No one was in the yard. Collins knocked on the door. No answer. She knocked again. Silence. Officers breached the door. Inside it was dark. Collins entered first, Glock at the ready. The smell was the same, earth and something else. They searched the first floor, living room, kitchen, study. Everything looked ordinary. A MacBook Pro sat on the table. Collins asked the tech specialist to check it. While he worked, the detective went upstairs. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, all clear, no traces. She came back down. The specialist was already working on the MacBook. He said the drive had been recently formatted, but he would try to recover the data. Collins decided to check the basement. The basement door was in the kitchen. She went down. Cold and damp. Boxes of tools in the corner. Old furniture. Nothing suspicious. Then she noticed another door, small, almost invisible, hidden behind a shelving unit. Collins moved the shelf aside. Behind the door was a staircase, leading even deeper down. She called the officers. Together, they descended. Below was a large room, about 30 by 30 feet. The walls were covered with soundproofing material. In the center stood a table with computer equipment, monitors, servers, cables. On the walls hung maps of Montgomery County with markings. Collins stepped closer. The markings matched the addresses of vacant houses, including the Maple Street home and the mansion on the outskirts. On the table lay folders with documents. Collins opened one. Inside were photographs. Photos of young women and men, all in their 20s to 30s. Beneath each photo, information, name, age, address, place of study or work. Collins recognized some of them: Emily Grayson, Nicole West, David Horton, all missing persons. But there were other photographs, people Collins did not recognize, possibly those not yet reported missing or those whose cases had been closed. The tech specialist went down into the room and began checking the computers. After a few minutes, he said the servers contained encrypted files. He would try to break the encryption, but it would take time. Collins continued her sweep. In the corner stood a metal door. She tried the handle. Locked. Officers breached the lock. Behind it, a corridor, long and narrow, lit by dim bulbs. Collins walked down the hallway. At the end, another door. She opened it. Inside was a small room, no more than 6 by 6 feet. In the corner, on the floor, sat a young woman, emaciated, pale, dressed in dirty clothes. When she saw Collins, her eyes widened in fear. Collins approached slowly, careful not to frighten her. The girl stared in disbelief. Collins called for medics. They carried her upstairs, wrapped her in a blanket, gave her water. She couldn't speak, only cried. Medics said she was in shock, severely dehydrated, but alive. Collins returned to the corridor. Officers found 3 more rooms. 2 were empty. In the third lay a young man, unconscious but breathing. Medics began treating him immediately. In total, 2 living victims were found in the underground bunker. The girl was Jessica Lee, 24, missing for 3 months. The young man was Kevin Wright, 26, missing for 2 months. Martin Holmes was found the next day. He attempted to leave the country through Philadelphia International Airport, but was detained at the border. During questioning, he refused to testify. His lawyer maintained his client's innocence, arguing the evidence had been obtained unlawfully. But the tech specialist managed to break the server's encryption. Inside were terabytes of data, videos, photos, documents. All of it proof that Holmes had been abducting people for many years. He lured victims with fake invitations on Instagram and Snapchat, used vacant houses to host parties where he drugged them with Rohypnol, then transported them to his bunker, where he kept them for weeks, filming them and selling the videos on the dark web. Collins watched in horror as Holmes, dressed in ordinary clothes and blending in with the guests, approached young women and offered them drinks. The footage showed him leading one of the girls upstairs, the same girl in the cat costume Brad had seen. Holmes then took her out through a back door no one at the party noticed, put her into the Ford Transit van, and drove away. The girl was never found. Holmes refused to say where she was. Holmes's case went to court. He was charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, human trafficking, and attempted murder. But the exact number of victims was never established. Among the files on the servers were recordings dated 10 years earlier, meaning Holmes had been doing this for a very long time. Collins continued the investigation, searching for other victims and trying to confirm their identities. But many recordings had no audio. Victims' faces were often obscured. The forensic examination went on for months. Jessica and Kevin survived, but the psychological trauma remained. They testified, describing the horrors they endured. Holmes kept them in darkness, fed them once a day, and forced them to follow his commands on camera. He told them no one was looking for them, that they'd been forgotten. The house on Maple Street was demolished a year later. Too much darkness was tied to that place. The mansion on the outskirts was torn down too. Collins hoped this would put an end to the case, but she knew many questions remained unanswered. What happened to the girl in the cat costume? How many more victims were never found? Was Holmes acting alone, or did he have accomplices? Collins kept searching for answers. She watched the footage again and again, hoping to catch even the smallest thread. But the more she watched, the more she understood. Some mysteries will never be solved. A year passed. The Holmes case was still technically open. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but he never revealed all his secrets. Sometimes Collins returned to where the Maple Street house had stood. Now it was an empty lot overgrown with grass. She would stand there, staring at the void, thinking about the ones who vanished, the ones never found. She knew that somewhere out there, in the dark, the answers remained. But she also knew some doors are better left closed. Thank you for watching.